When struggling baker Maya Dawson shares her rustic sourdough with a nostalgic old man at the farmer's market, she never imagines it will lead to a battle of wills with his stubborn tech billionaire son. But as the aroma of fresh bread awakens forgotten memories, can two wounded souls from different worlds find the recipe for love? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sunlight streamed through the cloudy windows of Harvest Moon Bakery, illuminating dancing flour particles in the air. Maya Dawson wiped sweat from her brow with her forearm, careful not to get flour on her face, though it was probably already too late for that. At 32, her dark curls were hastily tucked beneath a bandana, and her arms ached pleasantly from kneading dough since 3 that morning. The small bell above the door chimed as her assistant Zoe burst in, 2 steaming cups of coffee in hand. "You look like you've been here all night," Zoe said, placing 1 cup on the flour-dusted counter. "Please tell me you at least went home to sleep." Maya offered a tired smile. "Thanks for this. And yes, I did sleep. Just not much." She took a grateful sip of the coffee, closing her eyes briefly to savor the moment of respite. "The rent?" Zoe asked, her voice softening. Maya nodded, setting down her cup. "Due in 3 days. And we're still short." "How short?" "Too short. Almost $800. Maya sighed, turning back to the loaves she'd been shaping. The Wilsons' wedding order would have covered it, but they canceled when the groom's mother insisted on that fancy bakery downtown. "What about the business loan you applied for?" Zoe asked hopefully, Maya's hand still on the dough. "Rejected. Again." Apparently, an artisanal bakery with traditional methods isn't considered a, quote, viable investment in the age of mass production. She tried to keep the bitterness from her voice, but it was difficult. This bakery had been her dream since she was a little girl, watching her grandmother transform simple ingredients into magic in their tiny apartment kitchen. After her grandmother died and left Maya her cherished recipe box, she had promised herself she would honor that legacy, creating food that nourished both body and soul. "Well, it's Saturday," Zoe said brightly, changing the subject. "The farmer's market will be packed today. We should bring extra sourdough. It always sells out." Maya nodded. "Good thinking. I need to go anyway. We're almost out of honey from that local apiary, and Mrs. Jenkins always asks for it in her weekly sweetbread." 2 hours later, Maya navigated through the bustling farmer's market, her small cart loaded with loaves still warm from the oven. The weekend crowd moved around her, families examining fresh produce, couples sampling artisanal cheeses, children begging for homemade popsicles. The familiar energy of the market usually lifted her spirits, but today, the weight of her financial troubles made it hard to enjoy. She was arranging her bread at her usual spot when she noticed him, an elderly man sitting alone on a bench near the fountain. He was well dressed in a cardigan and pressed slacks, but his shoulders were slumped, and he was staring at a small paper bag in his hands with such profound sadness that Maya felt it across the crowded marketplace. She hesitated. She had her own problems, her own worries. She didn't have time to get involved in a stranger's troubles. But something about the dignified sorrow on the man's face reminded her of her grandmother in her final days, trying so hard to be strong while saying goodbye. "Excuse me," Maya said softly, approaching the bench. "Are you all right? Can I help you with anything?" The man looked up, startled. His eyes were watery behind expensive glasses, and he seemed embarrassed to be caught in a moment of vulnerability. "I'm fine," he said, his voice cultured but wavering. "Just an old fool having a moment of nostalgia." Maya sat down beside him. "I don't think you're a fool. Sometimes memories hit us when we least expect them." The man studied her face, as if trying to determine if her kindness was genuine. He must have been quite handsome in his youth, Maya thought. Even now, in his late 70s, there was something distinguished and intelligent about his features. "My name is Robert," he said finally. "Robert Harrington." "I'm Maya Dawson," she replied with a warm smile. "That's a nice bakery bag. Harrison's, right? From the other side of the market?" Robert looked down at the paper bag in his hand and sighed. "Yes, Today would have been my wife Eleanor's birthday. For 54 years, I would buy her favorite bread from this market. She loved to eat it warm with good butter and her mother's blackberry jam. His voice cracked. This is the second year without her, and I thought I could handle it on my own. But when I got here, I couldn't remember which bread was her favorite. He held up a scrap of paper with several types of bread scribbled in shaky handwriting. I have this list, but none of them tasted right when I sampled them. May I? Maya asked gently, holding out her hand. Robert passed her the list, and Maya read it carefully. Sourdough with a hint of rosemary, honey wheat, dark rye with caraway seeds. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. These are all lovely choices, she said. I'm actually a baker myself. I have a small shop called Harvest Moon Bakery, and I'm set up just over there today. She pointed to her stall. Would you like to try some of my bread? Perhaps one of them might taste like what you remember. Relief washed over Robert's face. You would do that for a stranger? Of course, Maya said, standing and offering her hand. Bread has a way of connecting people. It's never just about the food. It's about the memories we make while sharing it. For the next half hour, Maya guided Robert through her selection of breads, letting him sample small pieces of each one. As they tasted, Robert began to open up, sharing stories about Eleanor. We met in college, he said, his eyes brightening as he spoke of her. She was studying literature, and I was in engineering. Complete opposites, but she said, that's why we worked so well together. Maya laughed. She sounds wonderful. She was, Robert nodded. But I worry that I didn't appreciate her enough while she was here. I was always working, building the company. I thought I was doing it for her and our son, but now I wonder if I was just doing it for myself. Your son? Maya asked, offering him a piece of rosemary sourdough. Nathan, Robert said, his expression growing more complex. My boy. He runs the company now, Harrington Technologies. Maya nearly dropped the bread knife she was holding. Everyone knew Harrington Technologies. It was one of the largest tech companies in the country, known for innovative software and ruthless business practices. They had recently expanded into automated food production, industrial bakeries that could produce thousands of identical loaves per hour, threatening the livelihood of artisanal bakers like herself. I've heard of it, she said carefully. Robert seemed not to notice her reaction. Nathan is a good boy, but he's like I was. All work, no life. After Eleanor died, I tried to tell him what I'd learned, that no empire is worth building if you have no one to share it with. But he shut down. Thinks I'm just a sentimental old man losing his edge. Robert took another bite of the rosemary sourdough and suddenly went still. His eyes widened, then filled with tears. This, he whispered. This is it. This tastes like the bread Eleanor loved. How did you? It's my grandmother's recipe, Maya explained, touched by his reaction. She always said the secret was patience, letting the wild yeast develop slowly, giving the dough time to become what it's meant to be. It's remarkable, Robert said, holding the bread as if it were precious. It takes me right back to Sunday mornings with Eleanor. He looked at Maya with newfound respect. You have a rare gift, young lady. Maya carefully wrapped up a whole loaf for him. Please take this. No charge. I couldn't possibly. Please, Maya insisted. It would mean a lot to me, knowing it brings back good memories for you. Robert accepted the bread with careful hands. Thank you. This is the kindest thing anyone has done for me in a long time. He paused, seeming reluctant to leave. Would you mind sitting with me for a bit longer? I'd like to tell you about Eleanor, if you don't mind listening. Sometimes it helps to talk about her with someone new. Maya checked her watch. She had so much to do. Bread to sell, finances to sort out, a rent payment to somehow manifest. but the hope in Robert's eyes made it impossible to say no. "I'd love to hear about her," Maya said, sitting back down on the bench. 1 hour turned into 2 as Robert shared stories of his life with Eleanor. Their wedding day, the birth of their son, their travels around the world, their quiet evenings at home. Maya found herself laughing and occasionally wiping away a tear. By the time they parted, she felt as if she'd known Eleanor Harrington herself. "You have a gift," Robert said as they prepared to say goodbye. "Not just with bread, but with people. You've made an old man's day much brighter." Maya smiled. "It was truly my pleasure. Will you be okay getting home?" "My driver is waiting," Robert said, gesturing to a sleek black car parked nearby. "Perhaps I'll see you here next Saturday. I'd like to bring you some of Eleanor's blackberry jam. I still make it every summer using her recipe." "I'd like that very much," Maya replied, surprised to find she meant it. As Robert walked away, Maya suddenly remembered her original purpose at the market. She quickly bought the honey she needed and rushed back to her stall, where Zoe was dealing with a small line of customers. "Where have you been?" Zoe whispered as Maya took her place behind the counter. "We've been swamped. I've sold almost everything." "I'm sorry," Maya said, quickly wrapping a loaf for the waiting customer. "I got caught up helping someone." By closing time, Maya was exhausted but hopeful. They'd sold out completely, unusual for a Saturday. As she and Zoe counted the day's earnings, Maya realized they'd made enough to cover the rent with a small amount left over. "See?" Zoe said triumphantly. "The universe provides." Maya nodded but couldn't help wondering if her encounter with Robert had somehow changed her luck. It was a silly thought, of course. Just a coincidence, nothing more. Across town in the penthouse office of Harrington Tower, Nathan Harrington reviewed quarterly projections on a holographic display. At 35, he was one of the youngest CEOs in the tech industry, known for his analytical mind and unwavering focus on efficiency. He had his father's strong jawline and tall frame, but none of his warmth. The elevator announced a visitor with a soft chime. Nathan didn't look up as the doors opened. "You're late, Dad," he said, still scrolling through data. "The chef is holding dinner." "Some things are more important than punctuality, Nathan," Robert replied, setting his paper bag on the edge of the desk. Something in his father's tone made Nathan look up. Robert was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in what seemed like years. "You seem different," Nathan observed, turning off the display. "Did something happen today?" Robert settled into the chair across from his son. "I met someone at the market, a young woman. She helped me find the bread that your mother loved." Nathan tensed. He hated talking about his mother. The pain of her loss was still too raw, even after 2 years. "That was nice of her," he said flatly. "More than nice," Robert insisted. "She sat with me for over an hour, just listening to an old man's stories. No agenda, no rush. She has the heart your mother always wanted you to find." Nathan sighed. Here it came, another lecture about how he needed to open his heart and find someone special, as if relationships were just another project to be managed. "Dad, please." "Not tonight." "Her name is Maya Dawson," Robert continued, ignoring his son's discomfort. "She owns a bakery called Harvest Moon. Remarkable bread, all made the old way, with wild yeast and long fermentation. But I could tell she's struggling. The kind of person who helps others even when she needs help herself." Something clicked in Nathan's mind. "Harvest Moon Bakery on Pine Street. I think we've analyzed that property. The district is being evaluated for a new automated food production facility." Robert's expression hardened. "Tell me you're not planning to push that girl out of business, Nathan." "It's not personal, Dad. It's progress. Artisanal methods are inefficient and inconsistent. Our automated systems can produce bread that's uniformly excellent, without human error or limitation." "No," Robert said firmly. "This is exactly what your mother warned about. You've become so focused on efficiency and scale that you can't see the human element anymore." Nathan ran a hand through his dark hair, frustrated. "I see the human element clearly, Dad. That's why I'm successful. I understand what people need better than they do themselves." "And look how happy it's made you," Robert said sadly. "When was the last time you smiled?" Really smiled? Nathan had no answer for that. Instead, he changed the subject. "The chef made your favorite tonight, Coco Van." Robert shook his head but followed his son to the dining room. Throughout dinner, he continued to bring up Maya, her kindness, her skill with bread, how she reminded him of Eleanor and her passion for traditional methods. By the time dessert was served, Nathan had heard enough. "Fine," he said, putting down his spoon. "If it will make you happy, I'll meet this paragon of baking virtue and thank her for helping you. Will that satisfy you?" Robert smiled knowingly. "It's a start." The next morning, Maya arrived at her bakery before dawn, as always. The comforting ritual of mixing dough and shaping loaves usually centered her, but today, her mind kept drifting to her encounter with Robert and the worrying mention of Harrington Technologies. She was sliding a batch of sourdough into the old brick oven when she heard a knock at the front door. Strange, it was hours before opening time. Through the glass, she could see a tall figure in an expensive suit. Wiping her hands on her apron, Maya made her way to the door. The man outside was strikingly handsome in a stern way. With dark hair and familiar eyes, she instantly recognized those eyes. They were Robert's eyes, but without the kindness. She unlocked the door but didn't open it fully. "We're closed until 7, she said. "Ms. Dawson?" the man asked, his voice deep and controlled. "I'm Nathan Harrington, Robert Harrington's son." Maya hesitated, then opened the door wider. "Is Robert all right?" Something flickered across Nathan's face. Surprise, perhaps, that her first concern was for his father, rather than why he was there. "He's fine," Nathan assured her. "Better than fine, actually. He hasn't stopped talking about you since yesterday." Maya relaxed slightly. "He's a sweet man. I enjoyed our conversation." Nathan stepped inside, his gaze taking in the modest shop, with its worn wooden counters, vintage display cases, and the comforting aroma of baking bread. His expression was unreadable, but Maya felt like she was being assessed, evaluated like one of his business prospects. "My father said you were kind to him," Nathan said finally, "that you helped him find bread like my mother used to enjoy and listen to his stories. I wanted to thank you personally." "There's no need to thank me," Maya said, uncomfortable under his scrutiny. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Nathan said firmly. "They wouldn't have. Most people are too busy with their own lives to stop for an old man on a bench." There was something accusatory in his tone that made Maya bristle. "Maybe in your world," she replied. "In mine, people still help each other without expecting anything in return." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "My world?" "The world where everything has a price tag," Maya clarified, gesturing to his expensive suit and the luxury car she could see parked outside. "Where small businesses like mine are just inefficiencies to be eliminated in the name of progress." Understanding dawned on Nathan's face. "Ah, you know who I am." "Everyone knows Harrington Technologies," Maya said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "You're the people replacing skilled bakers with machines and algorithms." Nathan's expression hardened. "We're the people making food production more efficient, consistent, and accessible." "But that's not why I'm here today." "Why are you here, Mr. Harrington?" Maya asked directly. For a moment, Nathan seemed at a loss for words, an unusual state for him. "As I said, to thank you for helping my father," he hesitated. "And he suggested, I try your bread. He claims it's exceptional." Maya stared at Nathan in disbelief. "You want to try my bread? Really? Is that so surprising?" Nathan asked, a hint of defensiveness in his tone. "Honestly?" "Yes," Maya admitted. "Your company is literally building machines to replace bakers like me. It feels a bit like a hunter admiring his prey before the kill." Nathan's jaw tightened. "That's an unfair characterization." "Is it?" Maya challenged, then sighed. "Look, I have bread in the oven. I need to check on it." She turned and walked back to the kitchen, not particularly caring if he followed or left. To her surprise, he followed, maintaining a respectful distance as she opened the oven door and checked the loaves with practiced eyes. "Perfect," she murmured, mostly to herself as she slipped on oven mitts and transferred the golden loaves to a cooling rack. The rich aroma of freshly baked sourdough filled the small kitchen. Maya noticed Nathan's posture change subtly. A slight relaxation of his shoulders, an almost imperceptible softening around his eyes. "That smell," he said quietly. "It's familiar somehow." Maya glanced at him. "Bread is memory. That's what my grandmother always said. It connects us to our past in ways we don't always understand." For a brief moment, something vulnerable flickered across Nathan's face, but it was quickly replaced by his usual composed expression. "So," he said, "will you let me try the famous bread that impressed my father so much?" Maya hesitated, then nodded. "Wait here." She returned to the front of the shop, selected a loaf of rosemary sourdough that had cooled overnight, and brought it back to the kitchen. She cut a thick slice, added a small pat of cultured butter, and placed it on a simple ceramic plate. "Here," she said, offering it to him. "This is what your father recognized, my grandmother's rosemary sourdough." Nathan accepted the plate with a nod of thanks. He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, and then went completely still. Maya watched as his eyes widened slightly. "This is—" he began, then stopped, seeming to search for words. "Different, not what I expected." "Different good or different bad?" Maya asked. "Good," he admitted. "Complex. The crust, the texture." He took another bite. "I've never had bread like this." "Because it's not manufactured," Maya explained, unable to keep the passion from her voice. "It's alive. The wild yeast, the long fermentation, the hand-shaping, they all create something unique. Every loaf is slightly different, responding to the temperature, the humidity, even the baker's touch." "Inefficient," Nathan commented. "Soulful," Maya countered. Their eyes met in a silent challenge, neither willing to concede their position. The moment was broken by the sound of the front door opening. "Maya?" Zoe called out. "Are you in the kitchen? I brought those new labels you wanted to try." She stopped short in the doorway, her eyes widening at the sight of Nathan Harrington in their small kitchen. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had company." "It's fine," Maya said quickly. "Mr. Harrington was just leaving. His father is a new customer." Nathan placed the half-eaten bread on the counter. "Thank you for your time, Miss Dawson, and for your kindness to my father." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, placing it beside the bread. "If you change your mind about that dinner." "Dinner?" Maya asked, confused. "My father suggested I should invite you to dinner to thank you properly," Nathan explained, his tone neutral. "I assumed you'd decline." "You assumed correctly," Maya said firmly. Nathan nodded, as if he'd expected nothing less. "Good day, Ms. Dawson." After he left, Zoe rushed to the window, watching him get into his sleek, electric car. "Was that Nathan Harrington?" she asked wide-eyed. "What did he want?" Maya picked up the business card, turning it over in her hands. "Apparently to thank me for being nice to his father, and to invite me to dinner." "Dinner with Nathan Harrington?" Zoe's voice rose in disbelief. "The Nathan Harrington. And you said no?" "Of course I said no," Maya replied, sliding the card into her apron pocket instead of throwing it away, which had been her first instinct. "Men like him don't ask women like me to dinner unless they want something." "Maybe he wants you," Zoe suggested with a grin. Maya rolled her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous. He's probably just humoring his father." But as she went back to preparing the day's bread, Maya couldn't help wondering about the moment when Nathan had tasted her sourdough. That flash of recognition, almost vulnerability, that had crossed his face. For a split second, she'd glimpsed something beneath the polished exterior, something almost human. Maya shook her head, dismissing the thought. Men like Nathan Harrington didn't have vulnerabilities. They had strategies, and whatever his strategy was, she wanted no part of it. Outside, Nathan sat in his car, the taste of Maya's bread still lingering on his tongue. It had triggered something, a memory so distant he'd almost forgotten it existed. Sunday mornings in his grandmother's kitchen, the house filled with the aroma of baking bread, His mother's laughter as she spread homemade jam on warm slices. He pushed the memory away. That world was gone, replaced by one of efficiency and innovation. Yet for the first time in years, someone had looked him in the eye and challenged him, had seen beyond his wealth and position to something she clearly didn't like. "Where to, sir?" his driver asked. Nathan hesitated, then made a decision. "The office. And contact research. I want everything we have on Harvest Moon Bakery and Maya Dawson on my desk by noon." As the car pulled away, Nathan found himself thinking about the flash of fire he'd seen in Maya's eyes when she'd spoken of soul and tradition. It had been a long time since anyone had challenged him like that. Despite himself, Nathan was intrigued. Nathan Harrington stared at the file on his desk, a frown deepening the lines on his forehead. The information on Maya Dawson and her bakery was exactly what he'd expected. A struggling small business with mounting debt, declining revenue, and little chance of survival in today's market. On paper, it was exactly the kind of inefficient operation that Harrington Technologies' new automated food production would rightfully replace. But this wasn't just any business. This was the livelihood of the woman who had shown kindness to his father. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Alicia Chen, his chief of operations, stood in the doorway. "Yes," Nathan said, closing the file. "What's the status on the Pine Street project?" "On schedule," Alicia replied. "We've secured agreements from all property owners except for 3, a bookstore, a vintage record shop, and that bakery you asked about. The owner of the building is getting impatient." Nathan tapped his fingers on the desk. "Put it on hold." Alicia looked confused. "The entire project?" "Temporarily," Nathan clarified. "I want to explore some alternative approaches." After Alicia left, Nathan opened his desk drawer and took out a photograph he rarely looked at anymore. His mother, father, and himself at his college graduation. Eleanor Harrington's warm smile looked back at him, her eyes full of the compassion that had defined her life. "What would you do, Mom?" he whispered. He already knew the answer. His mother would help without hesitation, but she would do it in a way that preserved dignity. Nathan picked up his phone and dialed. "Dad, how would you feel about visiting that bakery again?" Maya was making sourdough starter for the next day's bread when the bell over the door chimed. She looked up to see Robert Harrington walking in, his face lighting up when he spotted her. "Mr. Harrington," she said, genuinely pleased. "What a nice surprise." "Please, call me Robert," he insisted. "And I've brought you something." He held up a small jar. Eleanor's blackberry jam, as promised. "That's so thoughtful," Maya said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Would you like some fresh bread to go with it? I just took a batch out of the oven." As they discussed different breads that would pair well with the jam, the bell chimed again. Maya glanced up and froze. Nathan Harrington stood in the doorway, as imposing in his tailored suit as he had been the day before. "I hope you don't mind," Robert said, noticing her expression. "I asked Nathan to drive me. My hands aren't as steady on the wheel as they used to be." Nathan nodded stiffly. "Miss Dawson." "Mr. Harrington," Maya replied, equally formal. Robert looked between them and sighed. "Nathan, why don't you help Maya while I sit down? These old legs need a rest." Before either could object, Robert had settled himself at one of the small tables by the window, leaving Maya and Nathan standing awkwardly by the counter. "I don't actually need help," Maya said quietly. "I don't actually know anything about bread," Nathan admitted. A smile tugged at the corner of Maya's mouth despite herself. "Then why did you agree to this obvious setup?" Nathan glanced at his father, who was pretending to be very interested in a baking magazine. "Because it's easier than arguing with him. He's surprisingly stubborn for a man his age." "I heard that," Robert called from his table, not looking up from his magazine. This time Maya did smile. "Well, since you're here, you might as well make yourself useful. Hold this." She handed Nathan a large mixing bowl, which he took awkwardly, clearly out of his element. As Maya worked, measuring flour and salt with practiced ease, she found herself stealing glances at Nathan. Without his businessman persona concentrating on not dropping the bowl, he looked almost human. "So," she said, breaking the silence, Do you always do what your father tells you? Nathan raised an eyebrow. Only when it's easier than the alternative. Do you always help strangers crying on benches? Only when they need it, Maya replied. Not everyone has someone to turn to. Something flickered in Nathan's eyes. Recognition, perhaps. You sound like you know that feeling well. Maya focused on the dough, avoiding his gaze. My grandmother died 4 years ago. She raised me after my parents were killed in a car accident when I was 8. I know what it's like to be alone. She hadn't meant to share something so personal, and judging by Nathan's surprised expression, he hadn't expected it either. I'm sorry, he said, and for once his voice lacked its usual cool detachment. About your family. Maya shrugged, uncomfortable with his sympathy. It's life. We all lose people. Yes, Nathan said quietly. We do. The simple acknowledgement of shared grief hung between them, creating a momentary connection that neither had anticipated. The moment was broken by Robert, who had apparently finished his magazine. How's that bread coming along? He asked, cheerfully. Just about to let it rest, Maya said, taking the bowl back from Nathan and covering it with a damp cloth. The starter needs to work its magic. Would you like to try some of yesterday's bread with your jam? Robert beamed. That sounds perfect. Maya prepared a plate with slices of her country white bread, warmed slightly in the oven, and brought it to Robert's table along with a jar of jam. This reminds me so much of Sunday mornings with Eleanor, Robert said wistfully, as he spread the dark purple jam on a slice. She always said that sharing bread and jam was one of life's perfect simple pleasures. Maya noticed Nathan watching his father with an unreadable expression. Nathan, you must try this, Robert insisted, preparing another slice. It's your mother's jam recipe after all. Nathan hesitated, then sat down opposite his father. He took a bite of the bread and jam, and something remarkable happened. His carefully controlled expression faltered. For a brief moment, naked emotion crossed his face. It tastes like home, he said softly, then looked surprised at his own words. Yes, Robert agreed, his eyes shining. Exactly like home. As Maya watched this exchange, she saw Nathan Harrington in a new light, not as the ruthless CEO, but as a son who had lost his mother, a man who still carried the weight of that grief. I should check on my other customers, she said, giving them privacy for their unexpected moment of connection. For the next hour, she served her regulars while keeping an eye on the Harrington men. They talked quietly, with Robert doing most of the talking, and Nathan listening more intently than she would have expected. When they finally prepared to leave, Robert insisted on paying for the bread they'd eaten, pressing a $50 bill into Maya's hand despite her protests. It's not just for the bread, he said warmly. It's for giving an old man a piece of his happiest memories back. As Robert headed for the door, he turned to his son. Nathan, I just remembered I need to stop by the pharmacy. Why don't you take Maya to lunch while I run my errand? My treat, of course. Nathan and Maya exchanged looks of mutual exasperation. Dad, I'm sure Ms. Dawson is busy. I really should stay at the bakery. Nonsense, Robert waved away their objections. Zoe can watch the shop for an hour, can't she? And Nathan, you always work through lunch anyway. It would do you both good to take a break. Before either could protest further, Robert was out the door, moving surprisingly quickly for a man who had claimed his legs needed rest just an hour earlier. He's not subtle, is he? Maya said, watching him go. Subtlety was never his strong suit, Nathan agreed. I apologize for his enthusiasm. Maya hesitated. On one hand, the last thing she wanted was to spend more time with Nathan Harrington. On the other hand, she genuinely liked Robert, and the old man seemed determined to push them together. There's a cafe next door, she said finally. They make decent sandwiches. Nathan looked surprised by her acceptance. Are you sure? You seemed quite determined to avoid me yesterday. I'm doing this for Robert, Maya clarified. He reminds me of my grandmother. Something like disappointment crossed Nathan's face, but he nodded. For Robert, then. The cafe was small and cozy with mismatched furniture and local artwork on the walls. It was the kind of place Nathan would never have chosen himself, preferring the upscale restaurants where he conducted business lunches. They sat at a corner table, both stiff and uncomfortable. After ordering a vegetable panini for Maya and a turkey club for Nathan, they fell into awkward silence. "So," Nathan said finally, "how long have you owned the bakery?" 3 years, Maya replied. "It was always my dream, ever since I was little. My grandmother taught me everything she knew about bread." "And is it everything you hoped for?" Maya looked at him suspiciously. "You mean, am I happy even though I'm struggling financially?" "Yes, I am," she continued before he could respond. "Some things are more important than profit margins, Mr. Harrington." "Nathan," he corrected, "and I wasn't implying anything. I genuinely wanted to know if owning your own business has been fulfilling." Maya softened slightly. "It has its challenges, but when someone tastes my bread and it connects them to a memory, a feeling they thought they'd lost, like it did for your father today, yes, it's worth it." Their food arrived, providing a welcome distraction. As they ate, Nathan found himself watching Maya, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the small smile that appeared when she tasted something she liked. She was different from the polished, ambitious women he usually encountered, women who viewed him as a prize to be won or a stepping stone to a luxurious lifestyle. "Why did you say no?" he asked suddenly. Maya looked up from her sandwich. "To what?" "To dinner. Yesterday." She set down her sandwich and met his gaze directly. "Because men like you don't ask women like me to dinner without an agenda, and I'm not interested in being anyone's charity case or business transaction." "Men like me," Nathan repeated, his voice hardening slightly. "You've made a lot of assumptions about me, Miss Dawson." "Maya," she corrected, mimicking his earlier tone. "And are they assumptions? Your company has a reputation, you know. Automate, streamline, eliminate. Not much room for the human element in that equation." Nathan leaned back in his chair. "Business is business. Sentiment doesn't pay the bills." "No," Maya agreed, "but it makes life worth living. Something your father seems to understand better than you do." The jab stung more than Nathan wanted to admit. "My father and I have different perspectives. He built the company, but times have changed." "And some things never change," Maya countered, "like the value of human connection or the importance of seeing people as more than data points on a spreadsheet." Nathan studied her for a moment. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone softer, more easily impressed." Maya laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. "Because I helped your father?" "Kindness isn't weakness, Nathan. Sometimes it takes more strength to care than to walk away." Something in her words resonated with Nathan, touching a part of himself he'd buried long ago, the part that had cried when his mother died, the part his father had been too lost in his own grief to comfort. "My mother used to say something similar," he admitted, "that the strongest people are the ones who remain kind even when the world gives them reasons not to be." Maya's expression softened. "She sounds wise." "She was," Nathan said quietly. "My father isn't the only one who misses her." The confession hung between them, unexpected and real. For a brief moment, the barriers between them, wealth, status, perspective, seemed less insurmountable. The moment was broken by Maya's phone ringing. She checked it and frowned. "I need to get back to the shop. One of our regular customers has an emergency order for a retirement party." As they walked back, Nathan found himself reluctant for their time together to end. "Would you reconsider having dinner with me?" he asked. "Not because my father suggested it, but because I'd like to continue our conversation." Maya paused outside her shop. "Why? We clearly have different values and priorities." "Maybe that's exactly why," Nathan suggested. "Maybe we could learn something from each other." Maya hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't think so." "Thank you for lunch, Nathan." She entered the shop, leaving Nathan standing on the sidewalk, feeling rejected for the second time, an unusual and uncomfortable experience for a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. Inside, Zoe was waiting with wide eyes. Was that another lunch date with Nathan Harrington? What's going on? "Nothing," Maya insisted. "His father is playing matchmaker, that's all." "And?" Zoe pressed. "Is it working?" Maya busied herself with a bread display. "Of course not. We're too different. He probably sees me as some kind of quaint curiosity. The baker who still does things the old-fashioned way. Or maybe he actually likes you, Zoe suggested. Not everyone has an ulterior motive. Men like Nathan Harrington always have an agenda, Maya said firmly, and I'm not going to be part of it. But as she worked through the afternoon, Maya found herself thinking about the brief moment when Nathan had tasted his mother's jam on her bread. The flash of genuine emotion she'd seen in his eyes, the softly spoken words. It tastes like home. Maybe there was more to him than she'd assumed. Maybe beneath the algorithm-driven businessman was a person still capable of feeling, of remembering, of connecting. Or maybe she was being naive, seeing what she wanted to see in a man whose company represented everything that threatened her way of life. The next morning, Maya arrived at her bakery to find a courier waiting outside with a small package. "Maya Dawson?" the courier asked. "That's me," she confirmed, unlocking the door. "Delivery for you," he said, handing her the package and a clipboard to sign. Inside the shop, Maya opened the package curiously. It contained a small leather-bound book titled The History and Art of Bread Making, a beautiful, illustrated volume tracing bread traditions across cultures and centuries. A note was tucked inside. "Thought this might interest you. It was my mother's favorite." Maya ran her fingers over the embossed cover, surprised by the thoughtfulness of the gift. It wasn't extravagant or showy. It was personal, meaningful. Before she could dwell on it further, her phone rang. It was her landlord. "Ms. Dawson, I wanted to let you know there's been a change regarding your rent situation." Maya's heart sank. Here it came, the eviction notice she'd been dreading. "What kind of change?" she asked, bracing herself. "Your rent has been paid for the next 3 months, the landlord said. "Someone called yesterday and arranged it all." Maya froze. "What? Who?" "They asked to remain anonymous," the landlord replied. "Some kind of benefactor, I guess." "You must have friends in high places." After hanging up, Maya sat down heavily, her mind racing. An anonymous benefactor. The timing couldn't be coincidental. First, Nathan shows up at her bakery. Then his thoughtful book gift. Now this. She grabbed her phone and dialed the number on the business card he'd given her. It went straight to voicemail. "This is Maya Dawson," she said, her voice tight with anger. "We need to talk. Now." In his office, Nathan was reviewing acquisition proposals when his assistant buzzed him. "Mr. Harrington, there's a Ms. Dawson here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she seems upset." Nathan straightened his tie. "Send her in." The door opened, and Maya stormed in, clutching the book he'd sent her. Her eyes were blazing with anger. "Did you pay my rent?" she demanded without preamble. Nathan maintained his calm exterior, though he was surprised by her reaction. "I may have spoken to your landlord." "Why would you do that?" Maya asked, her voice rising. "I never asked for your help. I don't want your money." "It wasn't charity," Nathan said, standing up. "It was a business decision. We are considering investing in small food artisans in that area." "Stop," Maya interrupted. "Just stop. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was business. This was you thinking you could buy my… what? My gratitude? My affection? My compliance with whatever plans you have for my building?" Nathan frowned. "That's not what this was about." "Then, what was it about?" Maya challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to solve a problem. Me. With money. That's what you do, isn't it? Throw money at things until they go your way." "I was trying to help," Nathan said, his own anger rising. "Is that so hard to believe?" "Yes," Maya exclaimed. "Because people like you don't help people like me without expecting something in return. So what is it you want, Nathan? What's your price?" The accusations stung more than it should have. "Not everyone has an ulterior motive, Maya," says the man who runs a company built on calculating efficiency and return on investment, she shot back. "I don't need your help, and I don't want it. So stay out of my business and my life." She slammed the book down on his desk. "And I'm returning this. I don't accept gifts from people who think I'm for sale." As she turned to leave, Nathan called after her. "That's not fair. You're not giving me a chance to explain." Maya paused at the door. "Explain what? That you thought throwing money at me would make me fall at your feet in gratitude? Save it for someone who's impressed by your bank account, Mr. Harrington." The door closed behind her with a definitive click, leaving Nathan standing alone in his office, the rejected book on his desk. He picked it up, running his fingers over the cover, just as Maya had done earlier. His assistant's voice came over the intercom. "Sir, your 10 o'clock is here." "Cancel it," Nathan said. "Cancel everything for today." He sat back down, still holding the book. For the first time in years, someone had seen through his carefully constructed facade, had challenged him directly, and instead of being annoyed, he found himself intrigued. Maya Dawson was unlike anyone he'd ever met, fierce, principled, and completely unimpressed by his wealth and status, and he had no idea what to do about it. Robert Harrington was enjoying his morning coffee when his son walked into the kitchen, looking tired and distracted. "You look terrible," Robert observed. "Trouble sleeping." Nathan poured himself a cup of coffee. "I made a mistake," he admitted after a moment. Robert raised an eyebrow. "The great Nathan Harrington admits to a mistake. This I have to hear." "I tried to help Maya, Miss Dawson," Nathan explained. "I paid her rent anonymously, or so I thought." Robert winced. "Let me guess. She found out and didn't take it well." "That's putting it mildly," Nathan said, rubbing his temples. "She stormed into my office, accused me of trying to buy her, and told me to stay out of her life." Robert shook his head. "Didn't your mother and I teach you anything? People have pride, son. Especially people who've worked hard for everything they have." "I was trying to help," Nathan insisted. "No," Robert said gently. "You were trying to fix a problem the way you always do, from a distance, with money, without getting your hands dirty. Real help means getting involved, being present." Nathan sipped his coffee in silence, considering his father's words. "So what are you going to do about it?" Robert asked finally. "Nothing," Nathan replied. "She made it clear she wants nothing to do with me." Robert snorted. "Since when do you give up so easily?" "The Nathan I know sees obstacles as challenges to overcome." "This isn't a business deal, Dad," Nathan said, irritated. "No," Robert agreed. "It's much more important than that. It's about connecting with another human being, something you haven't done in a long time." The truth of his father's words hit home. Since his mother's death, Nathan had retreated into his work, avoiding emotional connections that might lead to pain. "What would Mom have done?" he asked quietly. Robert smiled sadly. "She would have found a way to help that preserve dignity. She would have seen the person, not just the problem." Nathan nodded slowly. "I need to make this right." "Yes," Robert agreed, "you do. And not with your checkbook this time." As Nathan left for work, a plan began to form in his mind. He would have to approach this differently, not as Nathan Harrington, CEO of Harrington Technologies, but as the man his mother had raised him to be, the man who had been lost in grief and ambition for too long. He picked up his phone. "Alicia, I need you to set up a meeting with the Pine Street development team and find out everything you can about artisanal bread making. Not the industrial process, but the traditional methods. What equipment do small bakeries use? What challenges do they face? Everything." "May I ask why, sir?" Alicia sounded confused. "Because," Nathan said, a new determination in his voice, "I need to understand something important." For the first time in years, Nathan felt something stirring inside him. Not the satisfaction of a successful business deal, but the challenge of winning over someone who saw him for who he really was and wasn't impressed. It was terrifying and exhilarating. Maya wiped down the counters of her bakery, trying to focus on the task at hand rather than the anger still simmering inside her. 3 days had passed since her confrontation with Nathan in his office, and she'd heard nothing from him since. Good riddance, she told herself. The last thing she needed was a wealthy businessman thinking he could buy her gratitude. The bell over the door jingled, and Maya looked up to see Robert Harrington entering, his familiar warm smile in place. "Robert," she said, genuinely happy to see him despite her feelings about his son. "What a nice surprise." "Hello, my dear," Robert replied. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Maya assured him. "Just catching up on some cleaning. What can I help you with today?" Robert glanced around the shop. "Actually, I came to talk to you about Nathan." Maya's smile faded. "There's nothing to talk about." "I think there is," Robert said gently. "He told me what happened. That he tried to buy me off?" Maya asked, her voice hardening. "That he made a mistake," Robert corrected. "A clumsy attempt to help without understanding what help really means." Maya crossed her arms. "Is that what he calls it?" Robert sighed and settled onto a stool by the counter. "My son has forgotten how to connect with people. After his mother died, he retreated into his work. It was safer that way. Algorithms don't break your heart." The simple explanation caught Maya off guard. She'd been so ready to believe the worst about Nathan that she hadn't considered he might be acting out of his own pain. "That doesn't excuse what he did," she said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "No, it doesn't," Robert agreed. "But it might help explain it. Nathan doesn't know how to help without taking control. It's what he does all day at work. Identifies problems and eliminates them." Maya frowned. "I'm not a problem to be eliminated." "Of course not," Robert said quickly. "And he knows that now. Believe it or not, you've made quite an impression on him." "Me?" Maya couldn't hide her surprise. Robert nodded. "You stood up to him. Most people don't. They're too intimidated by his position, his wealth. But you saw through all that right to the heart of him, and what you saw disappointed you." Maya didn't know how to respond. She'd been so convinced that Nathan was just another rich man, using his money to control others. But Robert's words painted a different picture, of a man who had lost his way, who'd forgotten how to connect. "I'm not asking you to forgive him right away," Robert continued. "Just don't write him off completely. There's more to my son than his bank account." Before Maya could respond, the bell jingled again. This time it was Zoe arriving for her shift. "Mr. Harrington," Zoe exclaimed. "Good to see you again." Robert stood, his knees creaking slightly. "And you as well, young lady." "I was just leaving." He turned to Maya. "Think about what I said, my dear. Second chances are rare in this life. Sometimes they're worth taking." As Robert left, Zoe raised an eyebrow at Maya. "What was that about?" Maya shook her head. "Nothing. Just family stuff." "His family or yours?" Zoe asked shrewdly. "Neither," Maya replied, though she couldn't help wondering why Robert's words had affected her so deeply. Across town, Nathan sat in a small, cluttered office, feeling distinctly out of place in his tailored suit. "So, Mr. Harrington," said Joseph Mendez, the owner of Rise and Shine Bakery Supplies, "your assistant said you wanted to learn about artisanal bread making. May I ask why?" Nathan shifted in his chair. "I'm considering a new investment opportunity. I want to understand the industry better." Joseph, a no-nonsense man in his 60s, gave him a skeptical look. "And you came to me instead of one of the big industrial suppliers because I want to understand how small bakeries operate," Nathan replied honestly. "The challenges they face, the realities of day-to-day operations." Joseph studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, let me show you around. But you might want to lose the jacket. It gets hot in the warehouse." For the next 2 hours, Nathan followed Joseph through his operation, listening and learning. He heard about rising costs, the difficulty of competing with supermarket chains, the delicate balance of ordering enough supplies without wasting product. He learned about the early morning baking schedule, the seasonal challenges, and the small joys of creating something authentic in a world increasingly dominated by mass production. By the time he left, his expensive shoes were dusty from the warehouse floor, his hands were marked with flour from handling different grains, and his mind was racing with new understanding. "Thank you for your time," he said to Joseph as they shook hands. You've been incredibly helpful. Just one question, Joseph said, fixing him with a direct gaze. This wouldn't have anything to do with Harvest Moon Bakery, would it? Maya Dawson's place? Nathan tried to hide his surprise. Why would you ask that? Joseph smiled knowingly. Small industry, Mr. Harrington. We talk. And Maya mentioned a businessman had been sniffing around. She was worried about a takeover. It's not like that, Nathan said quickly. I'm not trying to take over her business. Then what are you trying to do? Joseph challenged. Nathan hesitated, then decided on honesty. I'm trying to understand her world so I can connect with her as a person, not as a business opportunity. Joseph's expression softened. Well, why didn't you say so? If you'd told me you were sweet on Maya, I would have been more helpful. I'm not, Nathan began, then stopped. What was the point in denying it? Is there anything else I should know to help her? He asked instead. Joseph thought for a moment. Maya needs a new industrial mixer. The one she has is ancient and keeps breaking down. But she's too proud to take out another loan after being turned down twice, and too honest to run a crowdfunding campaign without telling her customers she's struggling. Nathan nodded. Thank you, Joseph. You've given me a lot to think about. As he drove back to his office, Nathan knew what he needed to do. Not a grand gesture with his checkbook, but something more personal, more meaningful, something that showed he understood her world and respected her place in it. The following Sunday morning, Maya arrived at the farmer's market early, hoping to secure the best flour and honey for the week ahead. As she made her way through the stalls, a familiar figure caught her eye. Nathan Harrington, dressed in jeans and a simple button-down shirt instead of his usual suit, was examining bread at a competing vendor's stall. He looked different, more approachable, less like the intimidating CEO who had made her so angry. Maya considered walking away before he noticed her, but curiosity got the better of her. What was he doing here? Mr. Harrington? She said as she approached. Nathan turned, surprised and something like relief crossing his face. Maya, good morning. What are you doing here? She asked directly. Learning, he replied simply. About bread, about your world. Maya raised an eyebrow. And why would you do that? Because I made a mistake, Nathan admitted. I tried to help you in the wrong way. I thought money could solve the problem, but I didn't understand that it wasn't about the money at all. His honesty caught her off guard. She had expected excuses or justifications, not this straightforward acknowledgement. No, it wasn't, she agreed. So I've been educating myself. Nathan continued. I spent time with Joseph at the supply warehouse. I've been reading about small business challenges. I'm trying to understand. Why? Maya asked, genuinely curious. Why go to all that trouble? Nathan met her gaze directly. Because you were right about me. I've been seeing people as problems to solve or assets to acquire for so long that I forgot how to just connect. And I'd like to try again if you'll let me. The vulnerability in his admission was unexpected and disarming. This wasn't the arrogant businessman who had tried to fix her problems with money. This was someone humbled, someone trying to change. Before Maya could respond, the bread vendor called out to Nathan. Hey, Mr. Harrington, I found that heritage grain flour you were asking about. Last bag of the month. Thank you, Nathan called back. He turned to Maya. Would you help me choose? I'm still new at this. It was such a simple request, so reminiscent of how she'd first met Robert, that Maya found herself nodding despite her reservations. As they walked through the market together selecting ingredients, Maya was struck by how attentively Nathan listened to her explanations, how he asked thoughtful questions about her business and her passion for traditional bread making. My mother loved to bake, he said, as they examined a particularly fine batch of local honey. Nothing fancy, just simple, honest food. She used to say that bread teaches us patience and humility, that we can't rush it or control it. We can only create the right conditions and then trust the process. She sounds wise, Maya said. She was, Nathan agreed, and I'd forgotten too many of her lessons until recently. Their eyes met, and for a moment Maya saw beyond the wealthy businessman to the man beneath, a man who had lost his way but was trying to find it again. Would you have coffee with me? Nathan asked suddenly. Not a date, just a conversation, a chance to start over. Maya hesitated, then made a again decision. Coffee. Just coffee. They found a small cafe at the edge of the market, settled at an outdoor table, and talked, really talked, about their families, their dreams, their fears. Nathan spoke about the pressure of taking over the family company, the weight of responsibility, and the loneliness of success. Maya shared her struggles to keep her bakery afloat, her determination to honor her grandmother's legacy by making bread the traditional way. "I still don't agree with how you tried to help me," Maya said as they finished their coffee. "I know," Nathan acknowledged, "and I won't do it again, but I would like to help, if you'll let me. Not with money, but with whatever you need." Maya studied him, trying to gauge his sincerity. "Why? Why do you care what happens to my little bakery?" Nathan took a deep breath. "Because when I'm with you, I remember who I used to be before algorithms and efficiency metrics became my whole world, and I'd like to get to know that person again." The simple honesty of his words touched something in Maya that she'd been protecting for a long time. The part of her that wanted to trust, to connect, to believe in people again. "I'll think about it," she said finally. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. And for now, that was enough. The next week brought unexpected changes to Harvest Moon Bakery. First, Joseph from the supply warehouse called to offer Maya a special discount on organic heritage flowers. Then, a popular food blog contacted her about featuring her bakery in their Hidden Gems section. Most surprisingly, 3 local cafes called to inquire about carrying her bread in their establishments. "Something strange is happening," Maya said to Zoe as they prepared a large order for a new cafe client. "We've never been this busy." Zoe grinned. "Maybe your luck is changing. Or maybe someone is pulling strings," Maya said suspiciously. "Would that be so terrible?" Zoe asked. "If Nathan is helping by sending business your way instead of just writing a check, isn't that different?" Maya considered this. It was different. Instead of trying to solve her problems directly, he was creating opportunities, opening doors without pushing her through them. That evening, as Maya was closing up shop, her phone rang. It was Nathan. "I hope I'm not bothering you," he said when she answered. "No, I'm just finishing up for the day," Maya replied. "What can I do for you?" "Actually, I was wondering if you'd have dinner with me tomorrow night." "A proper dinner this time, not a setup by my father." Maya hesitated. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, but another part remained cautious. "Did you have anything to do with the sudden increase in business at my bakery?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I may have mentioned to a few colleagues that I knew a talented baker, but I didn't pressure anyone, and I didn't offer incentives. I just made introductions." It was exactly what she'd suspected, but his honesty was refreshing. He wasn't trying to hide his involvement or take credit. "So, dinner?" Nathan prompted when she didn't respond. "Yes," Maya said finally. "Dinner would be nice." Robert was reading in his study when Nathan returned home that evening. He looked up from his book, noting the smile on his son's face. "Good day?" he asked casually. "Yes," Nathan replied, loosening his tie. "Maya agreed to have dinner with me tomorrow." Robert closed his book, unable to hide his pleasure. "That's wonderful news. What changed her mind?" "I took your advice," Nathan said, settling into the chair across from his father. "Instead of trying to fix her problems, I tried to understand them. I spent time learning about her business, her challenges, and then I found ways to help that respected her independence." "Your mother would be proud," Robert said softly. "She always said you had her heart, even if you tried to hide it." Nathan was quiet for a moment, remembering. "I miss her, Dad, every day." "So do I, son," Robert replied. "So do I." They sat in companionable silence, both thinking of Eleanor Harrington and the legacy of love she had left behind. A legacy that was perhaps finally bearing fruit in her son's life. The restaurant Nathan had chosen was elegant but not ostentatious, a small Italian place with warm lighting and quiet corners. When Maya arrived, wearing a simple blue dress that she'd agonized over for hours, she found Nathan already waiting at a table near the window. He stood as she approached, his eyes taking in her appearance with obvious appreciation. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," Maya replied, suddenly shy. "This is a lovely place." As they settled into their seats, Maya was struck by how different this felt from their previous encounters. There was an ease between them now, a tentative trust building. "I have something for you," Nathan said after they had ordered. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. "It's not a check," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "And it's not charity." Maya took the envelope cautiously and opened it. Inside was a business card for an equipment repair specialist and a note that read, "This is Marco. He specializes in restoring vintage bakery equipment. He's expecting your call if you're interested. No strings attached." "Joseph mentioned your mixer keeps breaking down," Nathan explained. "Marco is the best in the business. He restored all the original equipment in my grandmother's kitchen that's now in a culinary museum. He'll give you a fair quote and honest work. Whether you call him or not is entirely up to you." Maya stared at the card, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. He hadn't tried to solve the problem for her. He had simply provided a resource, leaving the decision in her hands. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "This is perfect." Nathan smiled, clearly relieved. "I'm learning." The dinner that followed was unlike any date Maya had experienced. They talked about books they loved, places they wanted to visit, memories of their childhoods. Nathan spoke about the pressure he'd felt taking over the family business after his mother died, how he'd thrown himself into work to avoid dealing with his grief. "My father retreated into himself," he explained, "and I retreated into the company. We both found ways to hide from the pain." "And now?" Maya asked. "Now," Nathan said, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm trying to find my way back, to remember what matters beyond efficiency metrics and quarterly projections." As the evening drew to a close, Nathan walked Maya to her car. The night air was cool, and she shivered slightly. Without a word, Nathan removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. "I had a wonderful time," Maya said, turning to face him. "Thank you." "So did I," Nathan replied. He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to see you again soon." Maya nodded. "I'd like that too." For a moment they stood there, the air between them charged with possibility. Then gently, Nathan leaned forward and kissed her, a soft, questioning kiss that asked rather than demanded. When they parted, Maya felt something shift inside her, a wall beginning to crumble, a heart starting to hope again. "Good night, Maya," Nathan said softly. "Good night, Nathan," she replied, getting into her car. As she drove home, Maya touched her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. She had been so determined to keep him at a distance, to protect herself from what she had assumed he represented. But the man she'd had dinner with tonight wasn't the cold businessman she'd first met. He was thoughtful, vulnerable, trying to change, and despite all her reservations, she was falling for him. The following weeks brought a deepening connection between Maya and Nathan. They saw each other regularly for dinners, walks in the park, quiet evenings at her apartment where Nathan helped her test new bread recipes. He never pushed, never tried to take control, content to follow her lead and learn about her world. Robert watched with quiet satisfaction as his son transformed, smiling more, working less, rediscovering parts of himself that had been buried since Eleanor's death. "You seem happy," he commented one evening as they shared a drink in the study. "I am," Nathan admitted, "for the first time in a long time." "And Maya?" Robert asked. "Is she happy too?" "I think so," Nathan said. "I hope so." What neither of them knew was that across town, Maya was facing a new crisis. The owner of her building had received an offer, a substantial one, from a development company called Horizon Ventures. They wanted to convert the entire block into a high-tech food hall, and they were pressuring all the small business owners to sell. "They're offering 3 months' rent as compensation," Maya told Zoe, her hands shaking as she read the letter. 3 months! As if that's enough time to find a new location and move an entire bakery. "Can't you fight it?" Zoe asked. "How?" Maya said, despair creeping into her voice. "I'm month to month. I have no legal recourse. And this company, they're huge. They have lawyers, resources. She stared at the letter, at the Horizon Ventures letterhead with its sleek geometric logo. Something about it seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. "Have you told Nathan?" Zoe asked gently. Maya shook her head. "Not yet. I don't want him to think I'm asking for his help." "But he might know something about this company," Zoe pointed out. "He's in tech development too." "That's exactly why I don't want to tell him," Maya admitted. "What if there's a conflict of interest? What if his company is somehow involved? I'm finally starting to trust him, to believe in what we're building. I don't want business to come between us." But as she placed the letter in her desk drawer, a nagging doubt took root in her mind. Horizon Ventures. Why did that name sound so familiar? That night, unable to sleep, Maya did what she'd been avoiding. She searched online for Horizon Ventures. What she found made her blood run cold. Horizon Ventures was a subsidiary of Harrington Technologies, Nathan's company. The betrayal hit her like a physical blow. All this time, while he'd been gaining her trust, getting close to her, his company had been planning to force her out of her bakery, the bakery that was her life, her grandmother's legacy. Had it all been a lie? The thoughtful gestures, the genuine conversations, the kiss that had made her believe in second chances. With trembling hands, Maya reached for her phone and dialed Nathan's number. It went to voicemail. "I know about Horizon Ventures," she said, her voice breaking. "I know it's your company. Was this your plan all along, to distract me while you set up the purchase of my building? Don't call me back. We're done." She hung up, tears streaming down her face. She'd been so foolish, so naive. She had let herself believe that Nathan Harrington had changed, that he had seen her as more than just a business problem to solve. But in the end, it seemed that business was all that mattered to him after all. Nathan stared at his phone in disbelief, listening to Maya's message for the third time. Horizon Ventures. His company trying to buy her building. None of it made sense. He immediately tried calling her back, but the call went straight to voicemail. "Maya, I don't know what you're talking about. Horizon Ventures is a subsidiary of Harrington Technologies, yes. But I had no idea they were involved with your building. Please, let me explain in person." After leaving the message, Nathan hurried to his computer and began searching through the company's recent acquisition files. It took him less than 10 minutes to find what he was looking for: a proposal for the purchase and redevelopment of a block on Pine Street, including the building that housed Harvest Moon Bakery. The project had been initiated 8 months ago, long before he'd met Maya, but the final approval had come through just last week, and the executive who had signed off on it was Alicia Chen, his operations director, using Nathan's pre-approved authority while he had been focused on other projects and on building his relationship with Maya. "Damn it," Nathan muttered, reaching for his phone again. This time, he called Alicia. "Sir," Alicia answered, sounding surprised to receive a call from her boss so late in the evening. "The Pine Street project under Horizon Ventures," Nathan said without preamble. "Tell me everything." Alicia cleared her throat. "It's proceeding as planned. We've made offers to all the current tenants, and most have already agreed to vacate. There are just 2 holdouts, a bookstore and a bakery." "And who authorized the final approval?" Nathan asked, though he already knew the answer. "You did, sir," Alicia replied, confused, "through the standing authorization protocol. It was within the parameters you established for projects under 10 million. Nathan closed his eyes, understanding now. He had set up a system that allowed certain executives to move forward with pre-vetted projects without his direct involvement, a necessary delegation given the size of his company. But in this case, that system had created a catastrophic misunderstanding. "Cancel it," Nathan said firmly. "Immediately. Send formal withdrawal notices to all tenants who received offers." "Sir," Alicia sounded shocked. "But we've already invested considerable resources in planning and initial payments. The projected return on investment—" "I don't care," Nathan interrupted. "Cancel it. And then I want a full review of all active Horizon Ventures projects. Effective immediately. Nothing moves forward without my personal approval." After ending the call, Nathan tried Maya again. Still no answer. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. This wasn't a conversation that could wait until morning. Maya sat in her darkened bakery, surrounded by the tools of her craft that now seemed to mock her with their simplicity and integrity. Just like her feelings for Nathan. Simple, honest, but ultimately unable to survive in the harsh reality of business. She had turned off her phone after leaving. Her message, unable to bear the thought of hearing his voice, of listening to whatever explanation or excuse he might offer. The sound of knocking startled her. Looking up, she saw Nathan standing outside the shop door, his face illuminated by the street light. For a moment, she considered ignoring him, but the intensity of his expression made that impossible. Reluctantly, she moved to the door and unlocked it. "We're closed," she said coldly as he entered. "Maya, please," Nathan said, his voice urgent. "I didn't know about Horizon Ventures' offer on your building. I had no idea they were targeting this location." "How could you not know?" Maya demanded, anger and hurt making her voice shake. "It's your company." "It's a large company," Nathan explained, "with multiple subsidiaries and thousands of projects. I delegate many decisions, including acquisitions under a certain dollar amount." "How convenient," Maya said bitterly. "I'm not making excuses." Nathan insisted. "I should have been more involved, more aware. But I swear to you, I didn't know about this specific project. As soon as I got your message, I looked into it and canceled the whole thing." This caught Maya by surprise. "You canceled it?" "Of course I did," Nathan said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I would never knowingly do anything to hurt you or your bakery." Maya wanted to believe him. The sincerity in his eyes, the urgency in his voice, it all seemed genuine, but she had been hurt before, had trusted before, only to be disappointed. "Even if that's true," she said carefully, "it doesn't change the fact that this is who you are, what your company does. You buy properties, force out small businesses, and redevelop for maximum efficiency. That's your world, Nathan." "It was," Nathan acknowledged. "But people can change. Companies can change. Priorities can change." He stepped closer to her. "I've been changing since I met you, Maya. You've reminded me that there are more important things than optimization algorithms and quarterly returns." "Pretty words," Maya said, though her resolve was weakening. "But how do I know I can trust them? Trust you?" Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. "Maybe this will help." Maya took the paper hesitantly and unfolded it. It was a lease agreement for her shop's building, but instead of Horizon Ventures, the landlord listed was Eleanor's Kitchen, LLC. "What is this?" she asked, confused. "A new company I've just established," Nathan explained. "Named after my mother. I'm buying the building, but not for redevelopment. I want to preserve it, to create a space where small businesses like yours can thrive without the constant threat of eviction or rent increases." Maya stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "You're buying my building to protect me?" "Not just you," Nathan clarified. "All the businesses there. The bookstore, the vintage record shop, the family-owned cafe. They all deserve a chance to succeed on their own terms, not to be pushed out because some algorithm sees a better return on investment in a high-tech food hall." The gesture was so unexpected, so contrary to everything she had assumed about him, that Maya didn't know how to respond. "I don't want you to do this for me," she said finally. "I'm not," Nathan replied. "I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Because my mother would have wanted me to use our resources to protect people's dreams, not destroy them. You helped me see that, Maya, but this decision is mine." He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "I'm not asking you to trust me completely right away. Trust has to be earned, and I'm willing to work for it. All I'm asking is for a chance to prove that what we've been building these past weeks is real." Maya looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face, so different now from the cold, distant man she'd first met in this very bakery. She thought about Robert, about the love he still held for his late wife, about the second chance at connection he'd found in their Saturday morning conversations. "One condition," she said. "Anything," Nathan replied immediately. "The lease has to be fair market value. No discounts, no special treatment. I pay what the space is worth, just like any other tenant." A smile spread across Nathan's face, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Agreed." And you'll have final approval on any changes to the building or common areas. Maya felt the last of her resistance melting away, not because of his grand gesture, but because of the respect behind it. The understanding that what she wanted most wasn't financial security, but dignity and independence. "I'm still mad at you," she warned, but there was no heat in her words. "I know," Nathan said, pulling her gently into his arms. "You have every right to be, but I'm hoping you'll let me make it up to you." As his lips met hers, Maya felt the hurt and anger of the past few hours receding. This wasn't the end of their story. It was a new beginning, built on a foundation of truth and understanding, rather than assumptions and mistrust. 2 months later, Harvest Moon Bakery was transformed. The new equipment recommended by Nathan's contact had made production more efficient while preserving the traditional methods Maya cherished. The cafe clients continued to order regular deliveries, and the feature in the food blog had brought in a steady stream of new customers. Most importantly, the anxiety that had been her constant companion, the fear of eviction, of losing everything she had worked for, was gone. The new lease from Eleanor's Kitchen LLC gave her security without sacrificing her independence. "The place looks wonderful," Robert said, admiring the new display cases and freshly painted walls as he entered the bakery for his weekly visit. At 78, he still had the same twinkle in his eye, but he moved more easily these days, buoyed by the joy of seeing his son happy again. "Thank you," Maya said, giving him a warm hug. "The security of knowing I'll be here for at least 5 years makes it worth investing in improvements." "And how are things with my son?" Robert asked, settling into what had become his chair by the window. Maya smiled. "Good, really good. He's different now, more present, more willing to listen. We still disagree sometimes, but we talk through it instead of jumping to conclusions." "Love will do that to a person," Robert observed casually. Maya blushed, but didn't contradict him. What she felt for Nathan had grown into something deep and true, something that both terrified and exhilarated her. "I have something for you," she said, changing the subject. She brought out a small basket containing several loaves of bread and a jar of jam. "I've been experimenting with your blackberry jam recipe. I hope you don't mind." Robert's eyes filled with tears as he accepted the gift. "Eleanor would have loved you," he said softly, "almost as much as my son does." The bell over the door jingled, and Nathan walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. He stopped short at the sight of his father, looking slightly embarrassed to have been caught in what had become his daily ritual, bringing Maya her favorite hazelnut latte. "Dad," he said, "I didn't know you'd be here." "Clearly," Robert replied with an amused smile. "Don't mind me. Pretend I'm not even here." Nathan rolled his eyes but crossed to Maya and gave her a quick kiss before handing her the coffee. "Good morning." "Good morning yourself," she replied, enjoying the simple domesticity of the moment. "Your father was just admiring the shop." "It looks amazing," Nathan agreed. "But then, you always did have a gift for making things beautiful." The way he looked at her made it clear he wasn't just talking about the bakery. "I should be going," Robert said, rising from his chair. "Mrs. Stevens from my building is expecting me to teach her how to make Eleanor's famous pot roast." "We'll see you on Sunday?" Maya asked. Their weekly family dinners had become a cherished tradition. "Wouldn't miss it," Robert assured her, patting his son on the shoulder as he headed for the door. "Take care of each other." After Robert left, Nathan turned to Maya with a more serious expression. "I have something to tell you." Maya's heart skipped a beat. "Is everything okay?" "More than okay," Nathan said. "I've been making some changes at Harrington Technologies, starting with Horizon Ventures." "What kind of changes?" Maya asked cautiously. "We're shifting focus," Nathan explained. "Instead of high-tech developments that push out local businesses, we're creating mixed-use spaces that prioritize small business preservation and affordable commercial rent." Maya stared at him in surprise. "That's a big change." "It's the right change," Nathan said firmly. "And that's not all. I'm establishing a small business grant program through the Eleanor Harrington Foundation, zero-interest loans and mentorship for entrepreneurs who might otherwise be overlooked by traditional lenders." "Like my grandmother was," Maya said softly. Nathan nodded. "Exactly. I can't undo the past, but I can help shape a better future, and I have you to thank for showing me the way." Me? Maya asked. I didn't do anything special. You did, Nathan insisted. You reminded me that behind every acquisition, every property development, every business decision, there are real people with dreams and struggles and dignity. You made me see them again, not as data points, but as human beings. He took her hands in his. You changed me, Maya, for the better. Maya's eyes filled with tears, not because of his grand business plans or philanthropic initiatives, but because of the transformation she had witnessed in him. From a man who had buried his heart beneath algorithms and efficiency metrics, to someone who was learning to be vulnerable again, to care deeply, to let love in. I love you, she said simply, the words she had been holding back for weeks finally breaking free. Joy spread across Nathan's face. I love you too, more than I ever thought possible. As they sealed this new declaration with a kiss, Maya thought about the strange path that had led them here. A chance encounter at the market, an elderly man crying on a bench, a young woman who stopped to help despite her own troubles. Second chances were rare in life, but when they came, they were worth embracing with an open heart. 6 months later, the farmers' market was bustling with Sunday morning shoppers. At the center of the market, a small ceremony was taking place. The dedication of a new permanent structure that would house vendors year-round, protecting them from the elements and providing a stable location for their businesses. The Eleanor Harrington Marketplace, Robert read from the bronze plaque, his voice thick with emotion, a place of connection, community, and second chances. Beside him stood Nathan and Maya, their hands intertwined. They had worked together on this project, Nathan providing the funding and business expertise, Maya coordinating with the vendors to ensure the design met their needs. Your mother would be so proud, Robert said to his son, of all of this, but mostly of you. Nathan squeezed Maya's hand. I couldn't have done it without her. We did it together, Maya corrected gently. That's what partners do. As the small crowd of vendors and community members applauded the official opening, Nathan turned to face Maya fully. Speaking of partners, he said, reaching into his pocket. There's something I've been wanting to ask you. Time seemed to slow as he dropped to one knee, holding out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, not a flashy diamond, but a delicate band of rose gold with tiny wheat stalks engraved around a modest center stone. Maya Dawson, Nathan said, his voice steady, despite the nervousness she could see in his eyes. You taught me how to open my heart again. You showed me what truly matters in life. Will you marry me? Maya looked from the ring to Nathan's hopeful face, then to Robert, who was watching with tears in his eyes and a knowing smile. She thought about how far they had all come since that first Sunday morning. The lonely old man, the struggling baker, the closed-off businessman. Each of them carrying their own burdens, their own griefs, until chance and compassion brought them together. Yes, she said, her voice ringing clear and sure. Yes, I will. As Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to embrace her, the market erupted in cheers and applause. In the middle of it all, Robert placed a hand on each of their shoulders, completing the circle of family they had formed. Sometimes, he said with the wisdom of his years, the market gives us exactly what we need when we need it most. We just have to be brave enough to reach out and take it. Maya smiled through her tears, knowing he wasn't just talking about produce and bread. The market of life offered second chances to those willing to risk their hearts again, to believe that after loss and disappointment, new love could rise like well-kneaded dough, warm and full of promise. As Nathan kissed her, sealing their promise to each other, Maya knew with absolute certainty that she had found her second chance, and this time she was holding on with both hands. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.